Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Well, again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, our latest post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Monday evening, and I'm joined by Edwin, who is wearing something slightly weird. Hi, Edwin. What you up to?
Mate, I don't know about you, but there's a lot of violence going around, so I thought I'd just protect myself. I don't know. I mean, you've been winning all sorts of awards and accolades on the Twitter sphere, on the mainstream media, and all sorts of things. So I thought, I don't know, maybe I just thought one of my jokes might, rub you the wrong way, and you might come around and bitch slap me or something. So I just thought I'd be protected.
Yeah, no, we're not in Oscar land at the moment, I'm pleased to say. It certainly was a bit of a shock, wasn't it?
Look, is the world getting violent and more violent, and all sorts of things happening? It's if it's not on the mainstream media, it's on with politics, with politicians globally want to take somebody else out, or making rhetoric along those lines, pushing for war. I used to sort of tend to think I used to enjoy the mean tweets. It was all sticks and sticks and stones will definitely break my bones. But words, you could live by them. Because mean tweets were a lot better in retrospect, in hindsight, than all the crap that's going on now and all the violence that's going on now, Martin. I don't know about you, but that's just the way I'm taking it.
No, it's pretty crazy, isn't it? And actually, he has form. He did it before, some time back, according to the BBC. I was listening to earlier on this afternoon. So we will see. But, there isn't...
But is that why he didn't get an Oscar for his depiction of Muhammad Ali, his representation of the Muhammad Ali movie? I mean, Chris Rock was still standing after that. Well, the poor guy's half his size. Seriously, I know he's been training and everything, continues to train, but I'll have a go.
Yeah, makes you wonder. So the question is, are they feeling lucky? Are you feeling lucky? And what about first-time buyers? Are they feeling lucky?
Oh man, I think are you feeling lucky, punk? Is one of those things that the government's asking the first-time buyers. I think, with all the distractions on with the mainstream media and just about everything on Twitter being on the bitch slap of Chris Rock, but I think I personally think that the government gave the first time home buyers a real good smack across the jaw. That's real violence in my view, in my opinion.
Well, certainly. So both sides of politics have now announced their election promises, right? Pre-budget and everything else, and of course they're all trying to throw yet more money at first-time buyers. Well, actually, more precisely, they are encouraging first-time buyers to try and borrow more because they can get away with a smaller deposit. Remember, of course, that they have to borrow more, which means they have to pay back more, and the interest rate will be higher. But, of course, nobody ever talks about that. And everybody talks about, it's great because we're pulling more first-time buyers into the market and allowing them to buy into this highly expensive markets. Of course, the bottom line is this will just put prices even higher. And high prices are generated by bad policy, and these bad policies continue.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And that's a sucker punch that a lot of the first-time home buyers aren't seeing. They're not seeing it coming, and the ones that are already in, I think there's 60,000 of them that are already in the market or so, or thereabouts, and they've made room for another 50,000. We've expanded it to another 50,000 or so, and it's really, in my opinion, it's really a sucker punch. It's a jab, and pretend I'm going to hit you with a cross and then duck under your right cross, and then come underneath and smack you right in the ribs and take you out. It's just one of those things, mate. And this is what the government are doing. We spoke about it last week. If you don't have, you don't have. If they promise you bridges, but we don't have rivers, but they'll promise you rivers along the way as well, and glaciers and all sorts of other niceties to go with it, and all sorts of rainbows. But it's a sucker punch. Unfortunately, it's a sucker punch. It's a scam for votes, and I feel a little bit sort of set back a bit by Cameron Kusher, the director of the economic research of Property Track, in applauding it. I mean, what's he applauding? Another 60,000 bastards going into to an overheated market, and they're going to be paying. They may not be paying 20% more for the properties that they're going to be buying because of this scheme, but they will be paying anywhere between 5 and 10% more than what the properties are worth. And let's face it, these properties that the governments are pushing are not your typical homes. They are, generally speaking, strata titled dwellings. There'll be a push for strata titled dwellings, whether it be townhouses or high-rise development or the like. And if it's freestanding home, it generally sits, it's generally at what you and I used to consider to be a townhouse not too long ago, which was 7 to 10 years ago, Martin. And it's on 250 square meters of land, in something that's being badly constructed on backfilled land. So it's really a sucker punch that the first-time home buyers are falling for. It looks like 60,000 of them already fallen for it as we speak.
Yeah, well, it is pretty shocking. And of course, they always claim, well, it means you don't have to pay your lender's mortgage insurance, which would perhaps be $30,000. That's often capitalized into the loan, by the way. So it's not like it's a capital payment you have to make before you buy. But the point I want to make is that by going for a 5% deposit or a 2% deposit, you are having to borrow a lot more relative to the value of the property, which means that if there is a slight precipitation in the market, a slight fall in the market, you'd be in negative equity before you know it. And the other point is, who is picking up the tab in the situation where property prices don't continue to rise but go sideways, if later that you need to get out? The answer is the taxpayer. So basically, the taxpayer is now directly supporting the property market. That is the bottom line, right? Through government policy. And of course, that's because they're very scared about property prices correcting, and they're very scared about the election positioning. And so they want to say, well, we're doing something about housing affordability. We're throwing money at first-time buyers to allow them to get into the market. But no, it is a sucker punch. And it's interesting, I've spoken to a number of people who've bought over the last 12 months or so, first-time buyers, a lot of those using these schemes. And they're actually, in some cases now, significantly regretting the transaction. Why? Because the value of the property has dropped, the size of the mortgage is huge, and they're now worried about the higher mortgage rates, which of course everyone is now expecting to come any time soon. So, you can buy at the top of the market price-wise, and you can buy when mortgage rates are at the bottom, but unless you've got a really big buffer, you are going to be in severe difficulty. And unfortunately, some of those people are.
Yeah, look, I guess the thing is, from your point, is the talking about the buffer. A lot of them don't have the buffer because they've only come in with a very limited amount of money coming in. And if that's all they've got to come in with as a deposit, well, that sends alarm bells as it is. And how long did it take them to save that much? And this is where the economic research director of Property Track comes in and says, well, isn't it wonderful that the government are giving the balance? They're not gifting it. It's a loan. As you say, Martin. And if the market corrects itself, how far behind will they be, and are they going to be? And and on that note, and on that same page there, like even the people that you've researched and you've interviewed in your surveys, you've spoken to in your surveys. I mean, I dare say that a lot of them would be very, very fearful that they're not going to get the same amount of money for what they paid for, that they, when they bought, even in some cases, 6 to 12 months ago. And the market is correcting itself. It's correcting itself, and generally, you will see a greater trend and a greater precipitous falls in terms of in the outer regions of Sydney. That's where you'll see them, because that's where most of the people that have come in with that are sailing very close to the edge generally buy. And I want to stay in these new subdivisions because they get the new swanky new homes. But again, I say, and I've been saying it for many years, for as long as I've been in real estate, land is where the value is. Homes depreciating value, and they become outdated. And particularly now, the ones that are badly built, they're going to be falling to bits earlier than the use by date anyway. So all these issues are going to be looming on them. Not to mention the fact that the cost of living is escalating. And not only did we see rate rises outside of the RBA last week from the major banks, but now we're also seeing escalating prices in food. 20% rise here, 15% rise there. Petrol, means of transportation. So the cost of living is getting more and more expensive. And if you've, again, it goes back to, that's all you've saved and you want to stay in with the Joneses, or not so much the Joneses, maybe you want to stay in with the Smiths and the Taylors, closer to the network that you grew up in, or that your friends and relos are in, and you didn't want to sacrifice and go a bit further out to get bigger blocks of land. Well, you've got a lot of issues, fronting, about to front, come on, front first, and really smack you hard, because the people that are going to go in the market, that are cashed up, that have got a big buffer, that have got a deposit, that don't need the government grants, that are going to come in, are going to take advantage, and that's just the nature of this beast. And I see more and more of this unfortunate circumstance, and the government pushing. But again, I say it's really scam for votes, nothing else. But I think one of the ways that you also mentioned, and Tara tweeted out earlier today as well, and that is that at the end of the day, the taxpayer bears the brunt of it, especially when it all goes pear-shaped, and how quickly it's going to unravel is the question now, because it will unravel. The economic indicators, global economic indicators, let alone local economic indicators, are not showing any different.
No, well, that's certainly looking pretty negative, and it's just a couple of other points. The first is, of course, that when you buy a property, you incur additional transaction costs as part of the buying process. So when you come to sell, you have to remember that you've already sunk some money in there. The second point, of course, with all of this, is that first-time buyers have so much pressure on them to try and get into the market, and so much external pressure saying you must buy now, because if you don't buy now, it'll be even more expensive later. The fact is, we could well see property prices going lower. So at the moment, it might well be the best strategy to just wait and let property prices go lower, because we are already seeing those leading signs, particularly in those outer suburban areas where prices are already on the slide. And interestingly, some of those new properties that are still being built, I've noticed they've started to cut the price. So, I would say sometimes don't buy now, buy later.
Well, that's right. And again, the local indicators, as you and I talk about on a weekly basis, are the numbers that are shown on the portals for sale, and our introduction of even some of the people that are on the ground, putting out information, valuable information that a lot of people need to pay attention to and follow, because it gives them an idea as to where the market is really going. The mainstream media will take anywhere between 6 to 12 weeks to catch up on what's really happening on the ground. So the latest things that we've been reporting on is numbers going up, properties being passed in more on market, and at auctions, they're being passed in. They're not achieving the ideal sale prices that the agents have told the vendors they're going to get, or they have to take ahead and sell if they feel that that's the right strategy on the day. So the number of sales have certainly decreased in terms of volumes on being sold on the weekends at the auctions. We've seen that a lot more properties are being prior to auction, and there's a lot more passed in, which is some of the numbers that we're going to bring up later on, Martin. Just before we we started the show from one of our clients, and this was just telling. I think this is just fresh off the bat. It says, "Is it just me, or were the weekend sales results in Sydney super weak? Suburbs I am tracking have a lot of homes withdrawal." So this is what I get on a daily basis, and it's going to become almost on an hourly basis moving forward, and that's the trend. But the mainstream won't report a lot of what we put out on our podcast, what we put out on our videos, and what we put out on our Twitter feeds, Martin, because it takes them, as I said, anywhere between 6 to 12 weeks to catch up, because they follow the core logic figures, and you and I know that there's a lot of delays in those figures.
Well, there is. That's right. Exactly right. And I will one other point before we move on. The first-time buyer teasers now from both sides of politics, because Labor came out a couple of days earlier announcing their program. Right. Both sides are desperate not to appear to be at odds with each other here. They both want to see, the same story, because what they don't want to do is essentially be pulled apart like Labor last time around. So you can bet your bottom dollar that either side of politics, they're both peddling the same barrow. They're both focusing on trying to help first-time buyers on the theoretical excuse of helping housing affordability, but actually they're more supporting the construction sector. They're more actually politically positioning ahead of the election than anything else. And there is no strategic policy underpinning it that relates to improving housing affordability ahead. And that is a fail on both sides of politics.
Yeah, well, that's right. Maybe that's leading from that, Martin, is what you should do is you should run a survey and survey all politicians and find out, how many politicians have got investment properties as well.
Yeah, well, we did try actually. Some time ago, we started to try and look at those, because there is some disclosure at the federal level, but the level of disclosure is very, very low, and it's very hard to know precisely whether they're investment properties or not. So it's really hard to get a good read. But interestingly, in New Zealand, there was a survey done, and they actually showed that the average politician in New Zealand had multiple investment properties. One reason perhaps why they always want to keep prices going higher rather than lower.
Yeah, well, that's thing. I mean, and that's a general that's a consensus all around the world globally, isn't it? You don't want the industry that most of your politicians, your counterparts, or your comrades, or your peers, no matter what side of the fence, no matter what side of the aisle or what side of the bench you're sitting on, or the political spectrum you're sitting on, whatever you're in cahoots with together collectively. You're not going to want that market to drop, and you just see it over and over again, and that is the world, that is the violent world that we live in, and we just got to learn to navigate it. We just got to learn to, as we've been saying, to duck and weave, and to fend off any of this stuff, and really unpack it and unravel it to understand what the real motivation is. And if anybody thinks it's as I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the assailant of Chris Rock said, he did it for love. In his speech of when he won the Oscar, he did it for love, and that's what the government's saying. They're also doing it for love, for the love of the first-home buyers. Or is it the love of the of all the benefits that they get? But yeah, look, it goes on and on and on. But as we said, globally, there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of rhetoric. We've seen it on the screen, we've seen it live, and all it's doing, unfortunately, and as I said, one of the key indicators is creating a lot of supply chain issues, and that's going to put further impact on the property industry, and further, I'd say, it's further warnings and alarm bells going off, in my opinion, as to what you get involved with and how, and what you participate in moving forward, as the property market teeters on. Is it going to be a sharp descent? Is it going to be a soft fall? Is it going to be a gradual? Is it going to stagnate? We just got to follow the trends and follow the numbers on a weekly basis.
No, it just begs the interesting question, to what extent will the Ukraine thing blow up even further? I mean, the president of the US, I think, chucked a bit of a hand grenade into one of his speeches, right, and had to be dragged back. And we didn't really mean that, right?
But yeah, that's the thing, Martin. It's and if just words, work words, are creating all that we're in right now, let alone when it's full on conflict. What's it going to do? What's it really going to do? And I mean, the AFR are already talking about, they're noting the certain parts of Australia, certain cities, the Gold Coast, Perth, Townsville. The construction costs are the hardest hit areas with regards to supply chain issues and construction costs going up. I mean, I've got a couple of ideas as to why. On top of the global supply chains, but that's where we are right now.
Well, I was talking to some builders the other day, this building down the road here, and they have been waiting for windows, right? And normally the delivery time frame for windows is about 3 weeks, right? Yep. They're now at 12 to 14 weeks, and they still haven't got a firm delivery. Why? Because the firm that builds the windows are waiting for parts from China to be able to actually complete the construction of the windows before they can deliver them. So that's a classic example of, the backing up down the supply chain. And when you actually ask them, well, China, any particular part of China? Well, guess what? It was the part of China that was recently locked down.
And this is the thing that a lot of people seem to be under the impression that we manufacture a lot of products. We don't. We assemble. We don't necessarily manufacture a lot. We do assemble. We get the base products from China predominantly. And this is the thing where I think it was about 6 or so months ago where I was talking about a kitchen manufacturer that was waiting on special hinges for kitchens. He had 3 kitchens, to the tune of around about $75,000 each to deliver, but he couldn't deliver them. He couldn't finalize the delivery, couldn't finalize the installation because of just simple hinges. Now, from memory, my mind's fading at the moment. I'm getting a bit of a Biden moment, but it would have paid $4 a hinge, let's say, and there was another similar kitchen manufacturer over in WA that had a short supply on them. He had something in stock. He was able to track them down, and I think he wanted something like $80 a hinge. But I mean, it's ludicrous. But then again, but then he was, I dare say he was just sort of joking around, because at the end of the day, he would have had to fulfill his orders as well. And there's no way that people are letting go of key products, in relation to base materials or key elements to assembling products, whether it be electrical or electronic goods, because we're going to be in short supply. And as you say, that is where we would appear that we're heading towards. There's full conflict going on in certain parts of the world, and they're certainly feeling it. They're certainly going through the hunger and the pain already. And it's only a matter of time. And as time unfolds, we're going to see where we're going to end up. But with all that, Martin, on top of that, I guess one of the other reasons why I feel that they felt the pinch a lot more is, in a way, from my understanding, small understanding of the codes in Queensland and WA, the codes are a lot stricter. So obviously things are going to be a lot tighter with regards to the way they build and how they build, because they've got to. I mean, obviously, they get greater winds than what we do, and we seem to be a little bit more lackadaisical here in New South Wales than in this region. So they're always going to feel the pinch. But that's not all, Martin. That's that's in the building and construction industry. What about the medical? the base products for medicines and so forth. And as I mentioned earlier on, and for electronic goods, chips and the like. And how is that going to impact the ongoing? Now, some people say, well, how does medicine affect construction? Well, if people can't go to work, if labourers and builders and tradespeople can't go to work because they're sick, because they can't get medical attention, I mean, the waiting lists for elective surgery is phenomenal. And that affects and impacts all industries, not just the construction industry, but all industries.
That's true. And, all of these things just keep backing up and, just saying, well, of course, we'll be bouncing back and the economy is strong isn't really getting to the heart of the issues, right? On the ground, in my surveys, I see a number of businesses that are really still up against it. And actually, they've got more people off with the latest variant of COVID and, other issues, as well as the supply chain issues. And the other thing I'd make the point is that cash flows is becoming even more critical for a lot of small businesses. A lot of the bigger players are delaying paying the subcontractors so that they are the ones in cash flow crisis. And that is, of course, apart from the tax man who always demands their payment on time. So they are getting squashed, and these things are not going to, I think, ease anytime soon. So we're in for a bit of a wobbly ride, I think.
Yeah, look, that's right, and it's the creditors, the small suppliers, the contractors, the ones that always end up grabbing the wrong end of the stick or getting their asses kicked by the main by the builders, the developers, and so forth. And look, they're unsecured creditors. And again, we mentioned that invoicing on a number of construction sites have gone from 60 days to 90 days, in some cases 120 and pushing 150 days. I mean, how do you survive on that? And some of the major construction or building companies going broke. I mean, they're taking out 1,200, 1,500, subcontractors with them in one foul swoop, and it's crazy. So this is where it all starts to to unravel. And things start to get really, really, we start to sort of navigate or we start to glide or ice skate on very, very thin ice. So you really have got to have your wits about you. You really got to do all your research. You really got to have an understanding, not just a local understanding what the market's going. Just because some pundit just decided to get emotionally invested in a property and they wanted to pay 200, 300, 400,000 above market value because they got emotionally involved and they got conned. They also got bitch slapped by the auctioneer and the agents with dodgy bids on the day. Well, doesn't mean that you have to follow suit. And that's going to be that's part of the tip that I have for this week. But going back one step before we go into WeChat Chatter, Martin, the other thing is that these first time home buyers and the grants and how they're getting smacked in the teeth by the government, really. Also, understandably, we also got to understand that they may have worked at the numbers on the lower end of the scale, but what do you get in Sydney, where most of the people want to live? Well, what do you get for $700,000? Apart from apartments, and even then, apartments where in the outer regions of Sydney. So again, it comes back to the choices that these first-time buyers are going to make, how much they want to go in, hog themselves for, and even if you go a little bit further out into the subdivisions, as I said, they're not subdivisions where they were, the 520, 540. Where even then starts to get a little bit tight in terms of land and putting a decent home on it. We're talking about subdivisions that are, we're talking about 240, 280 square meters of land. I mean, 280 square meters of land. Go and pace it out. Go and measure it out. You could probably put 280 square meters of land in most of the established suburban backyards.
Well, that's right. Well, I did one of my one-on-ones with North Ryde as the centre of gravity, right? And North Ryde's an archetypal example of a suburb that's falling apart. A lot of very significant high-rise development, many, many similar apartments, all being offered on the market, including new ones as well as second-hand ones, and massive amounts of subdivisions going on because the planning allows it. Overall prices for apartments in that particular suburb are lower now than they were in 2017. It's worth thinking about, right? When everybody says prices have gone through the roof, well, not necessarily. And it's interesting if you look at what's for sale, how there are clusters of apartments in the various high-rise areas of North Ryde. A lot of them very similar, a lot of them, frankly, very small internal measurements in the high-rise setting. And you just think, this is completely nuts, it's falling apart. And I suspect the more people are going to find they're going to lose money rather than make money, let alone finding somewhere convenient and appropriate to live.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time as that with that market, unfolding and unfolding very, 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 very rapidly. And that's why the WeChat chatters, the local WeChat chatters have been, they've had their head down, tail up in the last week. And they've been doing two things, preparing for potential further economic downturns and amongst them, because obviously they get a lot of chatter from mainland China and the Krong 2.1 version that they're facing in China. They're also somewhat preparing here, because one of the things that we've been hearing over and over again, and not only from the WeChat chatters, but from other groups and other sources, other friends and other industries, how people that have come down with this, whether it's the Kron 1.0 or the Kron 2.1, but they've come, they're being infected, they've been, and they've just isolated for 7 days. But the general, what my understanding is that if you get it, you isolate for 7 days, and where you're good, bad, or ugly, you go back into the world. Now, I've got some friends that have been crook at home. Real estate agents that have been crook at home for 11 days now, and they're still testing positive. But their licensees are calling them every day to come back into work, and out of principle, out of just because they want to do the right thing by their morals, their understanding. They want to do the right thing. They keep on saying, no, we're still testing positive, and basically we don't want to continue to spread it. But it's these things that are also putting pressure, and this is where the local WeChat chatterers feel that post-election, we may be going into, potentially into another lockdown, but it will be post-election, because of the infection rate increasing, according to them, and to what they're listening to, what they're hearing. And it's a mirror image of what's happening in China. So further issues in China, everybody's just trying to survive. They're being tested at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever your WeChat, whenever your phone rings and your WeChat alarm goes off and the government says you got to go get tested, well, the whole building goes and gets tested. So friends have gone out and been tested. One day they got tested at 2 o'clock in the morning, another day at 3:30 in the morning. It was the whole building, not just them, but the entire building. And these are in industrial cities, in cities that are close to also ports that obviously ship goods out, and everything's pretty much in lockdown, and it's only getting worse by the week. So that's what the local chatters are doing, just head down, tail up, gathering as much as they can, and getting rid of the bad investments, which are the apartments. So this is what you and I have been talking about for a while. The apartments, the sooner they can get the tenants out, the sooner they can get them touched up, doled up, the sooner they can go on market. And again, this is just another trend that we're seeing in the numbers, is the apartment numbers just climbing and climbing and climbing. They're just not receding, mate.
Well, let's just briefly mention China before we move on. But of course, Shanghai, I think, is now looking as though it's going to be locked down as well. 24 million people or something. 9 days. They're going to test the first half of the city, the first few days, and then the other. And it's interesting that they're taking it really serious, the lockdown. So if you are actually proven to have positive, you either have to go to hospital or you have to go to a specific area to be, locked down until you're free. Otherwise, you are restricted you can't leave your property or you can't leave your compound. They shut down most of the railways again, the travel and the buses and things, and it's basically nothing much going to happen for a few days there in an attempt to get back to zero again. And of course, the question is zero COVID now a realistic objective? They keep at it, but it'll be interesting to see.
Well, the Premier of I think it's Victoria. I think he's pushing for zero, isn't he? He's still pushing for zero.
He's got it, and he's off for a number of days. So we'll see.
And really?
And going back to the numbers. I mean, the numbers here, in terms of listings, it's really, really interesting. As you say, apartments, wall-to-wall apartments.
Yeah, it is looking interesting from two sides of the spectrum. The first one is that from the morning screenshot. When I say morning, it was around about lunch, just before lunchtime, that I took that screenshot and I posted it out on Twitter. The numbers that were on there generally gives us an indication of where the week's going to start. I give the agents the morning to take off the old listings the listings that got sold, the properties that got sold over the weekend and transacted over the weekend, before we start taking out of the new listings coming on market. But between the morning screenshot and the afternoon screenshot, we've actually got I think around about 40 or 50 new listings come on market. Most of them are apartments. Very few apartments got sold over the weekend, according to the figures that I saw on Domain. Whereas homes are churning away. So we're seeing, typically when you get a Monday is typically when numbers recede up until Tuesday. Mid-morning, lunchtime, before the new listings start populating the portal again. But again, it's just the same as the last 3-4 weeks, where we've seen the portal being repopulated with new listings, to the point where the listings from the morning to the afternoon are higher, albeit by 40, 50, but they are higher nevertheless. So which is going against the trend. And the other trend that we've got to also speak about again is the fact that it's this time the seasonal listing trend should be receding by default anyway, as we prepare for winter, as we prepare for the Easter break and holidays and so forth. The school holidays and winter in general, but we're not seeing that, and we're not seeing that in houses. We ended up with more listings on market last week than the previous week. Didn't climb as much as the previous week, but nevertheless we ended up higher, and we could see that again, Martin. So these are the two significant factors that we're obviously keeping an eye on, and that's why we're saying to our clients, we're saying to our clients and friends, stay frosty. Just don't go in, don't go all in and throw everything at it just because you get emotionally tied up, or the emotions get the better of you on the day, or when you're making offers with the agents. So and again, these are the things that are alive. It's obviously there's a lot more listings on market than what Domain show. If you follow REA, you get a lot more on the REA portal. But Domain, just as I said, I've been using this for years, this baseline for years, because they define the Sydney region a bit better than REA and other groups out there that try to give you an idea, an indication of how many listings are on market in the Sydney region. I find that Domain define it a bit better, and also can we can pick the data or the information a lot easier. So apartments, I think they're poised for a dramatic exit, Martin, or a dramatic fall. In homes, the listings keep on climbing, and and until they start receding, I say to our clients and our friends and family, just stay frosty. If you don't get at the price that you want to get it at, and there's more coming on, and these are the numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's pretty consistent. And I've noticed as well, it's not just Sydney. There's a few other similar trends. If you look down in Melbourne, for example, I did some work the other day looking at some of the Melbourne suburbs and some interesting increases there in terms of apartments. You know, a lot of the stuff coming on is probably relatively low quality. Perhaps a lot of investment properties that were bought in haste. And it's interesting that some agents are now trying to claim that that particular one is better because it's got an extra bedroom or what have you, as though, you know, an extra bedroom in a high rise makes all the difference, right? Well, I'm not sure it does, but anything to differentiate.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, with apartments, it's just going to be very, very. I think the only thing that will differentiate a good apartment to a bad apartment is one for lifestyle, and one for lifestyle, in my view, is nothing that got built in the last 10 years. Lifestyle is really, you know, in a lower setting apartment where you end up with where you've got the majority are owner occupiers as opposed to investors, because the apartments that have 80, 70, 80, and in some cases even 90, 95% investor based, those buildings are going to be in a lot of strife. You're going to hear more and more stories of owners corporation demanding from the people that can contribute to the sinking fund or the management fund. They're going to get special levies, and they're going to be chased for it, because a lot of these people that own apartments are overseas. They can't get a hold of them, and litigation is taking a lot longer than what it used to, and to get a court resolution to sell an investment because they failed to meet their obligations by way of levies or incurred costs in the management of the property, as the owners corporation take them to court and sue the owners, and then they get court orders to sell in order to recoup the losses and to keep going. I mean, it's taking a long time. So a lot of that's it will unravel, it will unfold, because there's a lot of stuff in litigation. There's a lot of stuff in the tribunal. People are frantically trying to get tenants out. So look, this is where, if you're going to differentiate a good apartment from a bad apartment, there's some of the points, that by hook or by crook, you got to find out how many owner occupiers as opposed to investors, and generally stick to the lower setting. And if and if you don't mind a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of upkeep and updating, well, then you go for the good old 3-story walk-ups where there was no lift, but you do a bit of exercise going up and down the stairwell to take your shopping in and out. But the floor plans are generally bigger and then lower set, and also got more space. And the actual block itself sits on a bigger parcel of land anyway, which gives you a little bit more land that's accredited to you as a lot owner anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Be picky. Now let's move on and quickly talk about a couple of articles. The first one is really interesting, right? Because it's talking about the building cost rise. And you made the point earlier on that the building codes are actually probably better. In other words, they have higher standards in Queensland and in Perth. But that, of course, translates to higher costs, doesn't it?
Well, that's right. And this is these are the things that we've got to be very careful. I mean, I've had a number of people. One of our old clients have just bought a property in WA because his accountant told him it was a great idea. What his accountant didn't probably tell him is that he got $15,000-$20,000 referral fee for suckering him into it. But that's beside the point. Look, yeah, these costs are going to escalate, but one of the questions, or the question that you and I ask over and over again, is the what if. What if the market does turn? What if the market turns as sharply as what all the global and local indicators are showing us it has the potential to turn? And what does the investor end up at the end of the day? And this is one of the things that you've got a lot of people migrated to Queensland. You've got a lot of people that of late, I've noted that they've spent and have bought in Perth, investment properties in Perth, because they saw that market rise as well. But you got to look beyond, again, beyond the shiny brochures and beyond the fluff that the spruikers that are trying to sell you these things are telling you, and that is that you got to look at a number of other trends. You got to look at the rental trends. You got to look at the also because of the costs are rising to build these dwellings. What you find is that the dwellings aren't necessarily the builders will compromise. So if and when the market turns, and if it turns sharply, and a lot of investors that are bought in there in these markets, because they are typically investor markets, your Gold Coasts, your Ipswiches, your Logan Cities, your subdivisions, and so forth, and in WA, a lot of interstate investors bought into these areas, and I'm talking about homes, not necessarily apartments. So if the pressure goes, is put on the investors, and they have to offload their properties, which is what they will do in order to protect their principal places of residence. If they have to offload their investment properties, well, guess what, Martin? This is where size of the home, the size of the land envelope, the inclusions, the features will play a big role. Especially when you get an avalanche of property coming on market. And what you find is that local owner occupiers that will take advantage of a downward trend, the people that have been renting, and they take advantage of these downward trends in these regions, they don't necessarily go towards, or they don't necessarily focus or gravitate towards the homes that they typically would rent. They'll gravitate the focus towards properties that are older, that have got bigger parcels of land, and yes, they are more established, and they are in better and more established suburbs as well. And see, this is what a lot of interstate investors also don't get when we get into these precarious situations. And so the cost to build is greater, but you don't necessarily regain that cost when you sell, when the market is going south. And the biggest factor is because a lot of these new developments and new subdivisions don't sit on big blocks of land, because over the years the blocks of land that the subdivisions push through the councils get smaller, get squeezed, more and more, and they're also in very in areas where they've been reclaimed, or from swampland or some other natural waterway, natural causeway that with heavy rains it's just going to have issues.
Absolutely, and I guess the old adage is shiny new, small, versus maybe a slightly older property that is actually a little bit more spacious. It's interesting how superficially people often go for that shiny new small, but actually often that is not the most valuable option. And over time, you're not going to do as well as if you go for a slightly larger, slightly older, and as you say, a bit more land area and what have you. Makes a big difference. And I'm fascinated by the way that people keep getting hooked in with these latest appliances and finishes, etc., but peel back below that, it's really small. It may be shiny, it might be new, but it probably isn't a good buy.
No, and I look at the Kellyvilles of Sydney, and you see some of the homes that we've been attending of late for clients out that way, and you look at the new and shiny, and how small that. Yeah, they look good. Some floor plans work, others don't. They try to squeeze a lot of bells and whistles. When I say bells and whistles, they try to squeeze features. A nook becomes a what would otherwise be known as a nook or a study area. Now they partition that off or they add a wall, and then they call it a theatre room. But the floor space is still the same. It's nothing. All they've done is added a wall, which has made it more obvious that it's a very bloody small theatre room in the first place, let alone a study room.
Well,
but they're shiny, they're new. Sorry,
they call that a snug in the UK.
Yeah. So, yeah, you've got these things, but yeah, they are not new and shiny. Now you drive from these areas. You drive, and we're talking close to the 3 millions, Martin. So we're not talking million or 1.1 or 1.2. We're talking homes that are in the 2.6 to 3 million range. But then you go a little bit further afield, like you go from there, you go into the more established Kellyville area, where the village area, where the blocks of land are bigger. Yes, the homes are 20 years old. Yes, the homes are 20. From 20 to 15 years old or 17 years old, but they're big. The rooms are very spacious. Yes, the kitchens may be dated to some, but they're functional. A lot of the floor plans flow. A theatre room is really a theatre room because the blocks of land were closer to your 800s, as opposed to now being closer to your 550s or 600, and trying to put the same building envelope on it, which they pushed and they got, and then the pool is nothing more than a bathtub, embedded in concrete in the backyard.
Absolutely. Well, let's continue on with the articles, because there was another one which I think made a really interesting point, and again in the AFR, that higher rates is also something else that people should be thinking about, right? Because if you think about buying a property, you've got these ongoing running costs and the rates are going up.
Yes, you've got the mainstream ran just like a bat out of hell. They just with all the articles in the morning and come the afternoon, and Nyla just squashed them all with her article. Sweeney with high rates, property prices may dent demand for the home buyer scheme. So she really took put a dampener on this kerfuffle that the government wanted to make, as with a budget coming up tomorrow, I think it is, and the proposals in that for the first home buyers buying votes, and she's come out with this, which I thought it was interesting. Because again, it's just more pressure, Martin. More pressure for the young families that are just going to, in a way, throw their life away, into the new shiny stuff that's, albeit closer. I'd say to the young people, I've been saying to a lot of young people of late, and that is, just make a bit of a sacrifice and go a little bit further out. I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, Martin, but that's what we did when we were younger. And now the suburbs that we were now from, I mean, I grew up in Gladesville, ended up in owning a home in Liverpool, and then moving out further out west to St. Mary's for part of my life, owning a house over there. So it's not like we lived in the city all our lives. It's not like we lived in this. In our dreams all our lives, and now I'm even further out because of lifestyle. So it's some people just don't want to do that, and they'll get caught up. They'll get sucked into it, and they'll end up with sucker punched and end up with a lemon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will just make the point that, and I find this quite often when I have a chat with people, they haven't done their maths in terms of the other costs, like the rent. Like the rates, like the electricity, the other costs that go with owning a property, right? They haven't put those numbers into their spreadsheet to understand what the total commitment is. All they've done is to think about the interest payments on the mortgage, and of course the bank says I can afford that, but they haven't done the rest of the work. And so often what I find is that people are getting into difficulty. Actually, if they'd done their math right on day one, right, they would have understood that this was not an affordable property for them. But so often they get caught up and they don't do the work properly. So folks, if you're going to buy a property, or even if you're going to move up, or whatever it is, make sure that you do go through methodically all the costs, including maintenance costs, electricity costs, cost of water, the rates, all the
insurance,
all that stuff.
Especially now.
Yeah,
especially now.
Particularly if you're close to water, because it can really make the difference.
Yeah.
And I guess, if we go on a little bit and just talk a little bit about statistics, Mr. Koukoulas has actually made a really good point for once.
Well, look, he has, and we got to give credit when credit is due. And I think this is straightforward. It says if the market is right, and we see 275 basis points of hikes for each 100,000 of mortgage debt, monthly repayments will rise by $143 a month. For a $500,000 mortgage, that's $915 a month. For those folks with $1 million mortgage, that's an extra $1,830 a month. And most of these people that are coming onto these first home buyer schemes, Martin, are coming in with debt of anywhere between $700,000 and $900,000 in total when you add it all up. So we're sitting high. So this is what you were talking about. This is what you just said earlier on. That people just have not made the right calculations, and so he brings it. He brings it home. And very basic, very straight to the point. Brings it home, and he's got a winner there in terms of commentary.
Yeah, and remember that the banks are meant to be assessing repayments on 3% above the current mortgage rate. So in theory, the banks will have assumed that you've got a buffer of, in this case, on $1 million mortgage, $1,800, right? I wonder how many people actually have that amount of buffer in their finances now. And the answer is almost no one, because, of course, the truth is that the buffer calculation that the banks do is always on a very, very specific basis, and it doesn't actually take the full account of the real costs. So once again, what we find in our surveys is that the sensitivity to rising rates is much higher than the banks are actually suggesting, and yet nobody wants to talk about that. And then, of course, if you go to rentals, Louis Christopher is also he's speaking truth as well.
Yeah, everyone's on fire today, Martin. Everyone's on fire. So, but it's good. It's the other side of the coin that's generally not spoken about, which is taboo. Which is the politicians again have dropped the ball, have dropped the ball, and that's both sides of the floor. It says we have just updated our rents for the month. This will be the last update before April. Capital cities combined, weekly rents up another 2% for the last 30 days, up 6% for the quarter, and up 11.2% for the past 12 months. All cities are up. And this is what happens with bad government policy. This is what happens with bad policy. But then again, as we said earlier on at the beginning of the show, hands up. Hands up how many politicians don't have an investment property. It would be a lot easier to count than hands up those that do. And you could probably count on one hand. And then Louis says, no, these are asking rents, but I doubt much discounting is going on. And there isn't, because what we're getting on the ground is, as I pointed out in my tweet in response to Louis, is that in some areas of Sydney, some of our agent contacts are telling us that they are seeing more rental bidding wars on homes, pumping prices anywhere from 5 to 15% higher than what is being asked. The flip side, shitty property getting premium, and owners are in no rush to fix major issues. And that is a major problem that the government, the New South Wales government, doesn't want to face, sticks its head in the sand and doesn't believe it's there.
Absolutely. And, going on of comments from really interesting areas, well, the REA, of course, came out and said, well, of course, we just need to support aspiring homeowners. Everything will be fine. No surprise there.
Well, yeah, exactly. Surprise. Another cheerleader for for the sucker punch. That's what I'm going to call this. This incentive, the sucker punch. The priorities are. Priorities and where the focus of the institutes are, and that's the general consensus. Because again, they're only there for the big players, for the main franchisees, real estate franchises, all around Australia, and they'll cheer it on. The people can read that caption that the REA put out, cheering it on. It's hilarious, really. If you and I didn't see how evil it really is, it'll be a lot funnier than what we're saying it is.
Yeah, well, it is very disturbing, isn't it? When talking about disturbing, Lindsay David made a point. The indices do have a problem with the concept of going down.
Yeah, Lindsay's got the finger on this pulse, and he must have I think Lindsay's got a direct line in there. I think he's got a plant in CoreLogic, because every time CoreLogic goes down, he's the first one to tweet it out. And as surprise, a day or so ago, Lindsay puts out technical glitches only seem to happen when prices are falling. Coincidence or reality? Well, that's the hedonic daily index. What do you expect?
Well, the point is, of course, that when you have a negative number, that creates a whole lot of issues. I'm sure their model is very sophisticated, but perhaps it has some difficulty with negative numbers because, of course, it's against their religion.
Exactly.
And the last one from Tarek, just in terms of keeping everybody up to date. Auction clearance rates, not looking so flash again.
No, they're not. And as you point out, Sydney 44.7%, 68% this time last year. Melbourne 52.7%, 75.3% this time last year. And he does in his weekly tweets, he does carry on from the previous week, so you can see where we are. I mean, a little bit, 0.2% higher than what we were last week. But going back to the actual numbers that got sold, is what we're trying to find out, and we're going to try and put some of that information out. Martin is to get an idea, an indication of how many properties got sold. Unfortunately, obviously that's delayed because that information, the true nature of it, comes back from the Value General's office, where the Lands and Titles office, where everything gets registered, but it's not registered until, obviously, from sale to completion is generally 6 weeks. It could be an extra week or two for any anomalies, and then another couple of weeks by the time they release that data anyway.
Yeah, and I noticed that Tarek is blaming the closure of Nord Stream 2, right? Because he says that the boom is running out of gas. So there you go. You may have actually seen the connection between what's happening up in Europe and prices down here and auction clearance rates. We're running out of gas, folks.
Or is the market running out of gas? The market could be running out of gas, and the politicians are full of it, I know.
Well, I was going to say, at least this side of the election, we're going to have plenty of hot air, so maybe that will keep the whole thing up a little longer. But I don't know what you think, Edwin, but all of this short-termism, all of this sort of stuff, is all about just trying to win the election, right? Post the election, we're probably going to have higher interest rates. We will probably find that some of those promises that were made through the election will never be delivered because the budget will be in a worse state of repair. And the chances are that prices will continue to drift sideways or lower on the back of that. So again, I think your final tip of the week from earlier on, just to reiterate it, people should just calm down, just stay cool. Don't be swept away by auctioneers who actually are trying to get you to buy at higher prices than you should, because actually sometimes buying later rather than now makes much more sense.
Yeah, look, I'd say at the moment it's in a lot of the cases it's better to try and buy post the auction, especially with the ones that get passed in. This is when the owners get bitch slapped by their own agents. That it's a violent world out there, Martin, and this is when the owners have a reality check and a wake up call. And as much as our followers may get tempted to bitch slap the auctioneer on the day, if you do so, make sure you've got you got permission to do so. But violence is not the answer. That's what we do not condone violence, do we, Martin?
No, we absolutely do not. But we do condone.
We do condone mean tweets.
we do condone cautiousness, full data, analytics, and making sure that you've got all of your ducks in a row before you actually go commit. Right, and particularly now, probably more than ever, that is a really critical process to go through.
Yeah, and this is not the time to get emotionally caught up by trying to outbid, trying to be the standout on the crowd. That you can buy that bottle of champagne, you can buy that bottle of wine that they give to the winning bidder. You can buy that more than likely for under $100. But that extra $100,000 that you just tipped the vendor for getting a bottle of a $100 wine, it doesn't equate in our ledgers. So don't get caught up in the emotion. They get emotionally invested in it, and be very, very cautious not to breach your mark. In other words, don't tap into or don't bite into your buffer, because that is a buffer that you need to have aside, as I said, particularly with if it's a property, albeit even if it's relatively new, even if you come in within the statutes of the warranty statutes, even if you come in with that, there are still things that you're going to want to get done. There are things that you're going to get fixed, and there are the unknowns that, by the nature of the way that that the greater subdivisions are shifting and moving with the rains, and then let's not forget we are a nation or a city where we can experience months, years on end with heavy rains, but we're also a city that we've also experienced years on end with of drought, and that's why we've got a $30 billion desalination plant parked out at Cornell somewhere. We've got all these things, so don't be fooled, and don't get swept or don't get caught up in somebody else's emotion or invested emotions of wanting to have that property. If you want a bottle, if you want a bottle of wine, go down to Dan Murphy's. You can get one for under $50, and they're generally good.
Absolutely, and the bottom line is this: know your limit when it comes to the price that you can realistically afford to pay, and never go above it. It's not worth it.
No, not worth the headache. Not in this. Not under this climate.
Yeah.
Not with all the markers that we've just noted and we're pointing out on a weekly basis, and that we're keeping tabs on, Martin. It's just not. It's unnecessary. No need to. Too risky, even for me.
Edwin, great to catch up with you once again. Thank you very much, and we'll do it all again next week. Definitely,
Martin. All the best.
See ya. Bye bye.